Tim.
And we are Love to Hate.
And today we're taking a look at Old Salt by Tim Ferry and Neverboard Games.
Old Salt is a naval war game in which players are going to be sailing ships over the ocean blue, shooting cannons back and forth at one another, trying to sink ships, seize islands, and collecting booty. This is a game in which you are expanding and trying to conquer, taking over islands and eliminating your opponents. It is on Kickstarter, so we've included the link to the Kickstarter campaign down below if you want to check that out after you watch our video. We're going to show you how this game works, and then we'll come back and share our thoughts on what a gamer and non-gamer think of this game. So here's Old Salt, and before I show you too much of this game, I want to make sure you understand that everything you see here is prototype. The artwork, components, rules may look different when the final product is released. So with that being said, let me go ahead and show you this naval war game and give you an idea of what to expect with it. It is a very large board in which you are going to see lots of islands, different colors, and hexes. And along with that, you have some ship tokens. You have your different factions, which each come with their own faction bag, banners, and mast, as well as some special tokens that go along with certain factions. And in this game, you are going to be trying to sail your ships around, controlling these different islands, blowing other players' ships out of the water. And if you are able to control 6 islands before any other player, you are going to win the game. Let me go over these different factions with you, as that's a very important part of this game. Right here you see we have the engineers and their special tokens right there. You can see that each faction is going to have their own special abilities. And what's unique about this game is that you can play with these abilities, or you don't have to. There is a degree to which you are able to scale this game and make it more advanced and difficult, and including these faction abilities is one way to do that. You have the Eternal faction, and keep in mind some of these faction abilities may change. You have the Bootleggers. I think the Bootleggers are pretty cool. And you have on this side of the board, you've got the Forgotten faction. That was another one that I really enjoyed. You also have the Elite faction. And let me get that on this side so that you can see their banner and mast tokens. And then lastly, you have the Barbarians. And so with those 6 different factions, you are going to populate this board. Now, there are 2 ways that you can set up the game. One is to follow the pre-described outline that is in the rule book to do a quick version of the game, to go ahead and just get everybody out on the board, ready to play. There is a more detailed, advanced way to do it, and that is that players are going to start with a budget of coins, and these are your coin tokens, that you will spend to buy certain ships at your discretion. And you can buy as many as you want. However, if you spend all your money, you're going to start the game with no money, and that's a pretty bad thing because money is going to be extremely important in this game. Or you can buy fewer ships and save up your money, but the thing is you never get more ships in this game. Whatever you start off with, that is it. That is your fleet of ships. Now on that, let me go ahead and go over these different ships with you real quick. You have your Zealot ships, which Zealots are allowed to fire once free each round. You have your Hazard ships. Now hazard ships are hazard for a reason because at any time you can choose to blow them up and cause damage to any ships that are surrounding them. Your blue ships are going to be the Leviathans, and they have a health of 8, which is much more than any of the other ships. Then you've got your marksmen, which are able to fire at long range, but they aren't able to fire close up. And then last here, and it's got a little bit of a glare, I apologize, are your grunts. And grunts basically have no special abilities, but they are cheap. You can buy them for only 2 coins. And so that's your fleet of ships. You're going to choose which ones you want, and then you will pick your starting islands. And this is done in a draft manner in which one player will take one, and then you'll go around the board and each player takes the islands that they are going to start off with. Now in this game, it's very simple what you are going to be doing on your turn. You will have the option to sail up to 3 of your ships, and your ships have to sail in the direction that your mast is in. Just like in real life, your ship cannot sail backwards. It has to move forward. And you can sail 3 hexes unless you are sailing over a trade wind water space. You look over here, we've got a stack of colored tokens, and whatever is on the top of this stack, that is going to be the trade wind. So in this case, green, which happens to be this center squiggly line of hexes. And if you sail over a green hex when the green is on top of the trade wind, then you're going to be able to get an extra hex of movement. So I could go 1, 2, 3, but because my last one was on a green one, I can move 1 additional for 4. Now, I can do this again because you can get free movement up to 2 hexes, so I would be able to move 5 and get all the way to this island right here. Another thing you can do on your turn is you can seize islands. Now, it does cost 2 coins, and so this is where the money comes in, and there can't be another person's banner on there, and then you can place one of your own banners on top of it. Now, if there is another player's banner on there, you are first going to have to destroy one of that player's ships, because when you do, you get to claim their mast. And you have to exchange a mast in order to remove a player's banner on an island that they control. You also have to pay additional coins if that player has any banners that are adjacent or within 1 space of that island. The last thing that you might do on your turn is to attack. I mean, that is what this game is all about. Now, in order to attack, you have to be within range, and typically that range is 5 unless you are the marksman, and then your range is from 5 to 9. And we'll come back to that here in just a second. But let's say that this player right here is right there on this hex, let's say. Now, we're within range because, again, it's at least 5, and the reason why it's 5 is because you have to roll whatever number your range is or higher. Now, do note that there's not a 6 on this die. It only numbers 1 through 5 on here, so that's why the range has to be 5. And so in this case, I am 2 spaces away, so I would have to at least roll a 2 to be able to successfully attack. I have an advantage, though, because I am attacking with the broadside of my ship. You'll see here that the colored regions on this token are your broadsides. And just like in real life on these old-timey pirate ships, the cannon stuck out on the sides, the port and starboard sides, and so that's where you're firing from more than likely. And because of that, you have the special option of being able to pay 2 coins to fire 3 times. Normally, you have to pay 1 coin just to fire once. So that is one way to do some extra damage. Now, if you are attacking someone's stern or bow, in this case, then you have to add 1 to whatever it is that you have to roll. So in this case, I would have to roll a 3 in order to successfully attack. When you're attacking with the marksman, you do have to at least be 5 spaces away from your target. You negate the first 4 spaces when figuring out your range, and then the rest you add to figure out what you have to roll in order to be able to successfully attack. So in this case, I am 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I negate the first 4 spaces. I need to roll at least a 2 in order to successfully attack this player right here. When you do enough damage, like I said, the ship is going to sink. You get to claim their mast, in which you could exchange later on throughout the course of the game to claim an island that they may already have, or at the beginning of your turn, you can turn this in for additional coins. At the beginning of your turn, you're going to gain coins for every island that you control, minimum of 3. And that is the gist of the game. There's much more details to that with the different faction abilities, but I will leave you all to discover that on your own by looking through the Kickstarter. Right now, we're going to share our thoughts on this and let you know what a gamer and non-gamer thinks of Old Salt. All right, we're back. And now we're going to share our thoughts on this game and let you know what a gamer and non-gamer thinks of it. So, Sam, this is a war game, which I know, just speaking honestly here, that that's not typically your cup of tea when it comes to board games, as probably is the case for a lot of non-gamers. Why is that? What is kind of maybe your hesitation when it comes to war gaming?
I think there's just a lot of thought that goes into it. There's a lot of moving pieces, and it's a different type of strategy game than with others.
Very tactical.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, first impression when you saw Old Salt and you saw that it was a naval war game, what were maybe your first impressions?
The board is pretty impressive. It's rather large. There's a lot of components, but it's not overwhelming as some can be. And so that was interesting for sure. How the masts come off the boats and things like that. That's interesting little component. So it wasn't totally overwhelming for a war type game.
Yeah, for sure. The components I feel were very interesting, very fun to play with. You mentioned the masts and putting them into the ships, and that being a huge indicator as far as direction, where your ships are sailing, and the direction that they could go from that point forward. Thought that was cleverly done.
Yeah.
Good idea. As far as complexity goes and the rules, what did you think about that with this game?
It wasn't too difficult to learn how to play. I mean, it was a war game. You have to figure out what pieces you're going to move, where you're going to move them, what actions they're going to take. But it really was very applicable for a non-gamer.
One thing about this game is that you can customize how you're going to play depending on who you're playing with, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And being that, I game with my wife and she's a non-gamer, we can adjust the difficulty level about that. Do you want to say a little bit about that?
Well, it's just very customizable. You can, this can be a fun, longer, hard game for for gamers, for a night that they really want to, do something more difficult.
Battle it out for hours.
Yeah, or it can be a little bit shorter, easier to swallow game that you're just kind of learning and processing and playing with non-gamers.
Yeah, if you watch the rules overview portion of the game, we talk a little bit about that and how you can change some of the things up. One of the most impressive things I felt like as a gamer with this game is the setup process and, buying your ships and the freedom that you have in customizing your fleet of ships. And then whatever you don't spend your income, that's what you start the game with. I thought that was a really cool idea that you can do when you want to do a more advanced setup with this game. If you're playing with some hardcore gamers or even some non-gamers who maybe have played it a few times and are ready for a meatier game, if you will, you have the freedom to do that with this game. And I thought that's really cool because you don't always get that with a lot of games. And it's so important that you have that customizability, if that's a word, with war games because that gives you the replayability factor when it comes to the war game. So often I find anyhow with wargaming is that the game can get kind of stale after you've played it a few times. And when you've got the ability to kind of customize how you're going to set that up, that gives you that replayability and the freshness so that it doesn't get too stale. Old Salt does that. It gives you that ability to do that. So I thought that was a really cool thing.
And I always appreciate when a game can kind of do an introductory round at the beginning. It helps non-gamers a lot just to feel a little bit more comfortable with the game before you start adding in all the other components.
Absolutely. And as someone, trying to teach the game too, that's a huge thing.
Yeah.
That's a burden off of your shoulders when you're having to teach it, that you can kind of give them a semi-version of the game to understand and play. And even the rules suggest that when it comes to the faction abilities, that you can play the first few rounds without those faction abilities when you're playing with a new gamer, and then introduce it mid-game through. So I thought that was really cool that that's something that they included with the rule set. Now, we didn't get a chance to play at the extremely high player counts, but you can play this game with a lot of people, which I think is really cool when it comes to this type of game, because the more people you have, the more chaos there's going to be on the map and battles galore going back and forth. But even at a 2-player game, I felt like there was still something constantly happening each turn. In our games, we went back and forth, back and forth. There was, I think, probably several turns where I took an island of yours, and then you came right around on the other side of the map and took an island from me.
Yeah.
So the games go back and forth a lot with this, and it really wasn't decided until the very end.
Yeah.
So lots to like here when it comes to Old Salt. Now, I will say this is still a war game. And so, Sam, you being a non-gamer who, again, wargaming's not maybe your cup of tea, I think, that this is something that you got to just be aware of, that if wargaming isn't your thing, this is old-fashioned wargaming.
You can't hide the type of game it is.
Right.
You can make it easier or harder, but it is a war game through and through.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said at the beginning there, it does take a different type of strategy. It's very tactical. And so you just got to know that going into this. But for it being a war game, it is a very well done one. You can tell that the creator of this, Tim Ferry, did an excellent job as far as, putting a lot of detailed thought in each of those faction abilities and the way that you can use those abilities in the map and, just positioning yourself. So much about this game is about positioning too, making sure you're positioned right. So it was just very well done, well thought out. And I enjoy naval war for some reason. I think that's a really cool aspect to me, that you're just out on the deep blue sea and you got to stay on your ship and you go down with your ship and that's it. So anyhow, that's Old Salt, and it is from Neverboard Games, and it's running on Kickstarter right now. So check that link down below in the description of our video. Go check out their campaign.
And make sure to like and subscribe and push that bell button so you get notifications of all our new content.
I'm Lance.
I'm Sam.
And we are Love to Hate, where we try to bridge the gap between gamers and non-gamers. We'll catch you next time.